The massive chamber of Nexus Prime hummed with the voices of 1,000 different species. Ambassador Elena Vasquez sat in the human section, her hands folded calmly on the polished table before her. She had attended hundreds of these council meetings over the past 5 years, but something felt different today. The air itself seemed charged with tension, and the usual diplomatic chatter had an edge to it that made her skin crawl. The grand hall stretched up toward a dome of transparent aluminum, showing the swirling nebula beyond. Representatives from across the galaxy filled the circular tiers, their various forms creating a rainbow of colors and shapes. The Vorthak delegates, with their purple skin and multiple arms, gestured wildly as they spoke. The insectoid Klaxi clicked their mandibles in what Elena had learned was their version of nervous laughter. Even the usually calm ethereal collective seemed agitated, their translucent forms flickering more rapidly than normal. Chancellor Grimek of the Vorthak Confederation stood at the central podium, his forearms spread wide in what Elena recognized as a dominance display. His voice boomed through the translation systems, reaching every corner of the vast chamber. Honored delegates of the Galactic Council, Grimek began, his tone carrying barely concealed disgust. We gather today to address a growing threat to our peaceful galactic community, a threat that has been allowed to fester for far too long. Elena felt her stomach tighten. She had a sinking feeling she knew where this was heading. The species known as humans, Grimek continued, have shown themselves to be dangerously aggressive and unpredictable. In the mere 100 years since their admission to our council, they have expanded their territory by 300%. They have established colonies on worlds that other species considered too hostile to inhabit. They have developed technologies at a rate that defies all precedent and reason. Admiral Krax of the Hegemony rose from his seat, his reptilian features twisted into a sneer. Chancellor Grimek speaks the truth. These humans claim to be peaceful, yet every world they touch becomes a fortress. Every ship they build carries weapons that push the boundaries of our arms limitation treaties. They are a cancer, spreading through our galaxy. Elena wanted to stand, to defend her people, but diplomatic protocol demanded she remain silent until called upon. She watched as delegate after delegate rose to voice their concerns about humanity. The Pacifist Alliance spoke of humanity's barbaric history of warfare. The Trade Federation complained about human merchants undercutting established trade routes with their aggressive business practices. The Scientific Consortium worried about human researchers pursuing dangerous experiments without proper oversight. Through it all, Elena noticed something troubling. Not a single species spoke in humanity's defense. Even those who had benefited from human innovation and protection remained silent. The room felt like a predator's den, and humanity was the prey being circled. Finally, Chancellor Grimek turned his attention directly to Elena. Ambassador Vasquez, you will now hear the unanimous decision of this council regarding your species. Elena rose slowly, her heart pounding but her face perfectly composed. Years of diplomatic training had taught her to never show weakness, especially not here. I am ready to hear the council's words, Chancellor. Grimek's expression showed what Elena could only describe as sadistic pleasure. The Galactic Council has determined that humanity poses an unacceptable risk to galactic peace and stability. Your species' aggressive nature and rapid expansion threaten the careful balance we have maintained for thousands of years. The chamber fell silent except for the hum of life support systems and the distant rumble of the station's engines. Elena felt as if the entire galaxy was holding its breath. Therefore, Grimek continued, the Council demands the following actions from Earth and all human colonies. First, immediate surrender of all military vessels and weapons to Council oversight. Second, placement of all human colonies under direct Council administration. Third, submission of all human technological research to Council approval before implementation. Fourth, limitation of human population growth to levels determined by Council demographics experts. Elena's blood turned to ice. They weren't just talking about restrictions or oversight. This was complete subjugation. You have 72 standard hours to comply with these demands. Admiral Krax added, his voice dripping with satisfaction. Failure to comply will result in corrective action by Council forces. We trust you understand what that means. Elena looked around the chamber one more time, seeing the faces of beings who had once called themselves humanity's friends and allies. Now they watched her with expressions ranging from pity to contempt. Some looked almost apologetic, but none spoke up. None offered even token resistance to what was essentially a declaration of war against her people. She activated her communication device and spoke clearly into it. Message for Earth Command, Priority Alpha. The Council has delivered an ultimatum, demanding complete surrender within 72 hours. All terms attached. Recommend immediate implementation of all contingency protocols. Chancellor Grimek laughed, a sound like grinding stone. Ambassador, surely you don't believe you're primitive. Homeworld can resist the combined might of the entire Galactic Council. Your species may be aggressive, but you are still infants compared to civilizations that have existed for millennia. Elena smiled for the first time since entering the chamber. It wasn't a pleasant smile. Chancellor, I believe you may have made a serious error in judgment, you see. You've confused humanity's restraint with weakness. That's a mistake that species on Earth learned not to make a very long time ago. Is that a threat, human? Admiral Krax hissed, rising from his seat. No, Admiral, Elena replied calmly. It's a statement of fact. You've just threatened the lives and freedom of 8 billion humans and countless more in our colonies. You've demanded that we surrender everything we've built, everything we've worked for, everything we are. She paused, letting her words sink in before continuing. What you don't seem to understand is that humanity has been preparing for this day since we first learned that the galaxy was full of predators disguised as civilized beings. We hoped we were wrong. We hoped that reason and diplomacy would be enough. But we prepared for the possibility that it wouldn't be. The chamber erupted in angry voices as delegates shouted over each other. Some demanded Elena's immediate arrest. Others called for Council forces to move against Earth immediately. But Elena noticed that some of the older, wiser delegates had gone very quiet, their expressions thoughtful and concerned. Chancellor Grimek pounded his gavel repeatedly, trying to restore order. When the noise finally died down, he glared at Elena with undisguised hatred. Your bravado is amusing, Ambassador, but ultimately meaningless. The Council's decision is final. You have 72 hours. Elena gathered her materials and prepared to leave. As she reached the chamber doors, she turned back to address the assembly one final time. Honored delegates, you have made your position clear. Humanity will respond to your ultimatum within the specified timeframe. I suggest you use the next 72 hours to consider whether this is truly the path you wish to take. Because once humanity responds, there will be no taking back. What happens next? As the chamber doors closed behind her, Elena could hear the renewed arguments and discussions exploding throughout the hall. She walked quickly through the corridors of Nexus Prime, her mind already racing ahead to what would come next. She had work to do, and less than 3 days to do it. Behind her in the council chamber, delegates continued to debate and argue, convinced they had just witnessed the last desperate words of a defeated species. They had no idea they had just signed their own death warrant. 48 hours had passed since the ultimatum was delivered, and the silence from human space was deafening. In his private office aboard Nexus Prime, Intelligence Chief Mortex stared at the holographic displays showing communication patterns across the galaxy, where he expected to see frantic messages between Earth and its colonies, emergency broadcasts, or desperate diplomatic attempts. There was nothing. Mortex's tentacles twitched nervously as he reviewed the data for the 100th time. His species had evolved as ambush predators, and his instincts were screaming that something was wrong. Prey didn't behave this way. When faced with overwhelming force, they either fought desperately or surrendered immediately. They didn't just, "Go silent, sir." His aide, a young Klaxi named Brix, clicked into the office. "Admiral Krax is requesting another intelligence briefing." Mortex sighed, a sound that came out as a low whistle through his breathing slits. "Tell the Admiral that there's nothing new to report. Human communications have remained at normal levels. No emergency broadcasts, no military mobilization signals, no panic. Brix's compound eyes reflected confusion. But sir, surely that's impossible. An entire species facing extinction, and they're acting like nothing happened? That's exactly what's bothering me, Mortex muttered, turning back to his displays. In the council chamber, Chancellor Grimek addressed the assembled delegates with barely contained satisfaction. Fellow council members, the lack of response from humanity clearly demonstrates their acceptance of our ultimatum. Like all primitive species when faced with superior force, they have frozen in terror. Several delegates murmured agreement, but others looked less certain. Ambassador Theiss of the Ethereal Collective flickered with agitation. Chancellor, my people's long experience suggests caution. A cornered predator is often most dangerous when it appears calm. Admiral Krax laughed, harshly. Ambassador Theiss, your people haven't fought a real war in 3,000 years. You've forgotten what predators actually look like. Humans are scavengers at best, successful only because they've faced no real competition in this galaxy. Then, explain their expansion rate, Theiss countered. Explain their technological advancement. Explain how a species that achieved spaceflight less than 2 centuries ago has established colonies on worlds that we considered uninhabitable. Luck and recklessness, Grimek dismissed. They throw themselves at problems without proper planning or consideration of consequences. It works until they face organized opposition. Meanwhile, in a hidden chamber deep within Nexus Prime's infrastructure, Elena worked quietly at a sophisticated communication array. She had disappeared from her official quarters 2 days ago, but her absence had gone largely unnoticed amid the council's celebrations. The array was a marvel of human engineering, disguised as routine maintenance equipment, but capable of transmitting across the galaxy using frequencies that most species couldn't detect. Her fingers moved across the controls with practiced ease as she monitored transmissions from across human space. To anyone intercepting these messages, they would appear to be routine civilian communications, trade manifests, family messages, news broadcasts, shipping schedules. But Elena knew the code hidden within the seemingly innocent data. Every human ship in the galaxy had received its orders. Every colony administrator knew their role. Every military commander understood what was expected of them, and all of it was happening under the noses of the Council's intelligence services. On Earth itself, President Maria Santos stood in the war room beneath the Capitol, surrounded by holographic displays showing the positions of every human asset in the galaxy. General Rodriguez, head of Earth's defense forces, stood beside her reviewing the final preparations. "Ma'am, all colonies report ready," Rodriguez said quietly. "Civilian evacuations to hardened facilities are complete. Defense, platforms are armed and operational. The fleet is in position." President Santos nodded, her expression grim. "And Dr. Webb's project?" "Project Prometheus is fully operational. All test runs have been successful. We're ready to demonstrate why humanity survived its homeworld long enough to reach the stars." Across the galaxy, human colonies that had appeared calm and normal from the outside had undergone radical transformations. Underground facilities that no alien had ever seen hummed with activity. Weapons systems that violated every known arms limitation treaty powered up for the first time in decades. Ships that had been registered as civilian cargo vessels revealed their true nature as heavily armed military craft. On the mining colony of New Brisbane, Administrator Kate Murphy watched as the last transport lifted off, carrying the colonists to deep underground shelters. Above ground, the colony looked exactly the same as it had for years. Below ground, automated defense systems that had been built into the very foundations of every building came online. "Control, this is New Brisbane," she spoke into her communicator. "All civilians are secure. Colony defenses are armed and ready. We're good to go." Similar reports came in from every human world. New Manchester, Havens Gate, Liberty Station, Freedom Point all reported ready. The galaxy thought it was dealing with helpless prey. It was about to learn the difference between appearing harmless and actually being harmless. Dr. Marcus Webb stood in the control center of humanity's most closely guarded secret. a research facility that officially didn't exist. Around him, technicians made final adjustments to systems that represented 2 centuries of human innovation and paranoia. When humanity had first joined the galactic community, they had quickly realized that they were surrounded by potential threats. Unlike other species that had developed in relative isolation, humans had evolved on a world where everything was trying to kill them. "Doctor, all systems show green," his lead technician reported. "We're ready for full deployment on your order." Webb nodded grimly. "Let's hope we don't need to use it. But if we do, let's make sure the galaxy remembers why human ancestors hunted woolly mammoths with nothing but sharp sticks and stubborn determination." Back on Nexus Prime, Mortex continued to stare at his intelligence displays, his unease growing by the hour. 24 hours remained until the ultimatum expired, and still nothing from human space suggested panic or preparation for surrender. If anything, human activity seemed almost boringly normal. His aide Brix returned with another report. "Sir, our long-range sensors show human ship movements are within normal parameters. Trade routes are operating normally, even their military. Vessels are following standard patrol patterns." "That's what worries me," Mortex replied. "Show me the communication intercepts again." Brix activated the holographic display, showing samples of human communications from the past 48 hours. Shipping manifests from cargo vessels, family messages between colonies, news broadcasts about sports competitions and cultural events, scientific data exchanges between research stations. "Sir, it all appears completely routine," Brix observed. Mortex studied the data more carefully, his predator instincts refusing to be quieted. Something was wrong with this picture, but he couldn't identify what. The communications were too normal, too routine, too perfectly mundane for a species facing extinction. "Brix, run a pattern analysis on these communications. Compare them to human communication patterns from the past year. Look for any deviations, no matter how small." As his aide worked, Mortex continued to stare at the displays. In his experience, silence from prey meant one of 2 things. Either they had accepted their fate and were waiting to die, or they were preparing something that required absolute secrecy. Given humanity's track record, he was beginning to suspect it was the latter. The problem was, he had no idea what they could possibly be preparing that would make any difference against the combined might of the entire Galactic Council. But his instincts, honed by millions of years of evolution, continued to scream that something was very, very wrong. As the hours ticked down toward the ultimatum's deadline, the galaxy held its breath, waiting to see if humanity would surrender, or make one final futile gesture of defiance. None of them suspected that they were about to discover why humanity had never encountered a predator on Earth that they couldn't eventually hunt to extinction. The 72-hour deadline had passed 3 hours ago, and Admiral Krax was done waiting. His massive flagship, the Subjugator, led a fleet of 200 Council warships as they dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Sol system. The Admiral expected to find a hastily assembled defense fleet of human vessels, probably outnumbered and outgunned, making a desperate last stand for their homeworld. Instead, what he found waiting for him defied everything he thought he knew about humans and their capabilities. "Admiral?" his sensor operator called out, his voice tight with confusion. "I'm reading massive energy signatures throughout the system. Sir, there are ships here, but they're not matching any known human designs in our database." Krax moved to the main display, his reptilian features twisting into a frown. The tactical screen showed the Sol system, but it looked nothing like the intelligence reports had suggested. Where he expected to see a few dozen human ships scrambling to form a defensive line, he found a perfectly organized fleet of vessels that seemed to shimmer with energy. "How many ships?" Krax demanded. "Counting now, sir. 100, 200. Admiral, I'm reading over 400 vessels, and they're all massive. Some of them are larger than our heaviest battleships." The Admiral's blood ran cold. 400 ships was impossible. Human military doctrine called for small, fast vessels that could strike quickly and retreat. These ships were enormous, gleaming constructs that seemed to bend light around their hulls. "Sir, "We're being hailed by the lead human vessel," his communications officer reported. "Put it through," Crax snarled. The main screen flickered to life, showing the bridge of what was clearly a human warship. But it looked nothing like the cramped utilitarian human vessels that Crax had seen in intelligence reports. This bridge was spacious and elegant, with technology that seemed decades ahead of anything in the Council's databases. A woman in a crisp military uniform stepped forward. Her expression was calm, professional, and absolutely confident. "Admiral Crax, I am Captain Lisa Morgan of the United Earthship Defiance. Welcome to our solar system." "Captain Morgan," Crax replied, trying to project authority despite his growing confusion. "I am Admiral Crax of the Galactic Council Enforcement Fleet. Your species has failed to comply with the Council's ultimatum. Surrender immediately, or face the consequences." Captain Morgan smiled, and something about that smile made Crax's skin crawl. "Admiral, I'm afraid there's been a misunderstanding. You see, humanity has been preparing for this moment for quite some time. Much longer than you might expect." "Preparing for what?" Crax demanded. "For the day when the galaxy's true nature would reveal itself," Morgan replied. "Dr. Webb, would you care to explain to the Admiral what he's really facing?" The screen split, showing another location filled with advanced technology. An older human man in a scientist's coat stepped forward. "Admiral Crax, I am Dr. Marcus Webb, Director of Humanity's Deep Space Defense Initiative. What you're seeing around you is the result of 2 centuries of continuous military development." "Impossible," Crax spat. "Your species has been under Council monitoring since first contact. You've complied with all arms limitation treaties." Dr. Webb chuckled, a sound that somehow managed to be both friendly and menacing. "Admiral, we've complied with the letter of every treaty we signed. But you see, humans have a talent for finding creative interpretations of rules. Every treaty prohibited certain types of weapons and certain classes of ships. They said nothing about the weapons we developed or the ships we designed." "You're lying," Crax accused. "Our intelligence services monitor all human military development." "Your intelligence services monitor what we allow them to monitor," Captain Morgan interjected. "Every human colony, every research station, every civilian facility has had a secondary function that your people never detected. We've been building, testing, and perfecting our defenses right under your noses." Dr. Webb activated a holographic display that showed the development timeline of human technology. "You see, Admiral, when humanity first joined the galactic community, we realized something very important. We were surrounded by species that had never faced real existential threats. You've all had it easy for so long that you forgot what survival actually requires." The display showed human colonies being established, but now Crax could see what the Council's intelligence had missed. Every colony had been strategically placed. Every trade route had been carefully planned. Every research facility had been designed with military applications in mind. "Humans, on the other hand, evolved on a world where everything was trying to kill us," Dr. Webb continued. "We learned very early that the price of survival is constant vigilance and preparation. We hoped we were wrong about the galaxy's true nature, but we prepared for the possibility that we weren't." Admiral Crax looked at his tactical display again, seeing the human fleet with new eyes. These weren't the desperate ships of a cornered species. These were the war machines of a people who had spent 2 centuries preparing for exactly this moment. "Your move, Admiral," Captain Morgan said calmly. "You came here expecting to find helpless prey. Instead, you've found something else entirely. The question is, what are you going to do about it?" Crax's pride overcame his growing unease. "You may have hidden some ships from us, but you're still outnumbered. My fleet represents the combined military might of dozens of species. Your 400 ships cannot stand against our 200. Captain Morgan's smile widened. "Admiral, you're making the same mistake the Council has been making all along. You're assuming that bigger numbers automatically mean victory. Let me introduce you to some concepts that humans have been perfecting for millennia. Force multiplication, tactical superiority, and technological advantage." She gestured to someone off-screen. "Tactical, demonstrate human defensive capabilities. Non-lethal demonstration only. Suddenly, every screen on Admiral Crax's bridge lit up with warnings. His ship's computers were being accessed by external sources. Navigation systems flickered. Weapons targeting systems went offline and came back online, pointing at different targets. Life support systems briefly shut down before restarting. "What is happening?" Crax roared at his crew. "Sir, they're inside our systems," his technical officer reported in panic. "They have complete access to our entire fleet's computer networks. I don't understand how they're doing this." Captain Morgan's voice cut through the chaos. "Admiral, what you're experiencing is a gentle demonstration of human cyber warfare capabilities. In the time it took you to ask that question, we could have shut down your life support permanently, turned your weapons against your own ships, or simply sent your entire fleet into the nearest star." Dr. Webb appeared on screen again. "You see, Admiral, while your species focused on building bigger ships and more powerful weapons, humans focused on understanding how things actually work. Every piece of technology in your fleet is based on principles that we've studied and learned to manipulate." The cyber attack ceased as suddenly as it had begun, leaving Crax's fleet functional but thoroughly shaken. The Admiral stared at them, screens showing the human fleet, realizing that he was no longer looking at potential victims. He was looking at predators who had been disguised as prey. "This is impossible," he whispered. "No, Admiral," Captain Morgan replied, her voice carrying a note of pity. "This is what happens when a species that survived by hunting woolly mammoths with stone spears gets 2 centuries and unlimited resources to prepare for war. You thought you were coming to collect tribute from primitives. Instead, you've just discovered why humans never stayed prey to anything for very long." The truth hit Admiral Crax like a physical blow. The Council hadn't been monitoring a developing species that posed a potential threat. They had been unknowingly surrounded by apex predators who had been studying them, learning their weaknesses, and preparing for the day when the mask would finally come off. "What do you want?" Crax asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Captain Morgan's expression grew serious. "Admiral, that's a conversation you're going to have with people much more important than me. But I suggest you think very carefully about your next move, because humanity's response to your ultimatum hasn't even begun yet." Admiral Crax's hands shook as he gripped the armrests of his command chair. The revelation of humanity's true capabilities had shattered everything he thought he knew about the balance of power in the galaxy. But his pride, the same trait that had earned him his position as the Council's primary military leader, refused to accept what his eyes were telling him. "All ships, battle formation," he commanded, his voice carrying across the fleet communication channels. "Prepare to engage the human fleet. Show these primitives what real military power looks like." His bridge crew exchanged uncertain glances, but military discipline held. Across the Council fleet, 200 warships that represented the combined military might of dozens of species began to arrange themselves in attack formation. Weapon systems powered up, shield generators reached full capacity, and targeting computers locked onto the human vessels. Captain Morgan watched the Council fleet's movements on her tactical display with what appeared to be mild interest. "Tactical, what's your analysis of their formation?" Commander Jake Torres, her tactical officer, studied the enemy deployment with professional detachment. "Classic hammer and anvil, ma'am. They're trying to use their numerical advantage to envelope our formation. Standard doctrine for a force that expects to win through overwhelming firepower. And their weakness? They're assuming we'll fight like they do, ma'am. Big ships trading shots at maximum range until one side breaks. They have no idea what they're actually facing." Captain Morgan nodded and opened a communication channel to the Council fleet. "Admiral Crax, I'm going to give you one final opportunity to reconsider your course of action. What you're about to witness will change the balance of power in this galaxy forever. Are you certain you want to be responsible for that?" Crax's response came as a barrage of energy beams and missile salvos directed at the human fleet. The Council ships opened fire simultaneously, filling space with enough destructive energy to level a small moon. But the human ships didn't behave like any military force Crax had ever encountered. Instead of forming a defensive line and trading shots, they scattered like drops of mercury, moving with impossible speed and precision. The Council's targeting computers, designed to track conventional ship movements, couldn't keep up with the human vessel's erratic flight patterns. "What are they doing?" Krax demanded as his sensors showed human ships weaving between his fleet's formations like they were dancing rather than fighting. "Sir, their ships are moving faster than our tracking systems can compensate for," his sensor operator reported. "They're using some kind of drive system that doesn't match any known propulsion technology." The human counterattack began with surgical precision. Instead of the massive energy salvos that Krax expected, the human weapons were impossibly accurate beams that seemed to pass through his ship's shields as if they weren't there. But rather than destroying his vessels, the beams targeted specific systems with terrifying precision. "Sir, the Dominator reports complete engine failure," his communications officer called out. "The Subjugator reports weapon systems offline. The Intimidator is reporting that their life support is fluctuating." Across the Council fleet, ship after ship found itself crippled but not destroyed. Human weapons sliced through shield systems that had been considered impenetrable, disabled engines with surgical strikes, and knocked out weapon systems without damaging the ship's hulls or harming their crews. Captain Morgan's voice cut through the chaos. "Admiral Krax, you're witnessing a demonstration of controlled force. My ships have the capability to destroy your entire fleet in approximately 4 minutes. Instead, we're showing you what happens when a species that learned warfare from necessity faces opponents who learned it from tradition." But the true horror of humanity's capabilities was yet to be revealed. Commander Torres spoke quietly into his communicator, and suddenly the space around the Council fleet began to distort. "Sir," Krax's science officer called out in panic, "I'm reading massive gravitational anomalies forming around our ships. This is impossible. You can't weaponize gravity." "You can if you understand it well enough," Dr. Webb's voice came over the communication channel. "Admiral, what you're experiencing is controlled gravitational manipulation. We're creating localized gravity wells around each of your ships." One by one, the Council warships found themselves trapped in invisible prisons, their engines strained against gravitational forces that held them as securely as if they had been locked in chains. Ships that had been capable of faster-than-light travel found themselves unable to move more than a few kilometers in any direction. "This is a nightmare," Krax whispered, watching his mighty fleet rendered helpless by technology that shouldn't exist. But the demonstration was far from over. Elena's voice joined the communication from her position on Nexus Prime, where she had been working in secret for the past 3 days. "Admiral Krax, members of the Galactic Council, what you've witnessed today is a small sample of humanity's defensive capabilities. But defense was never our strong suit. We're much better at offense." She activated a series of displays that began broadcasting to every major government and military installation in the galaxy. The screens showed detailed intelligence files on every species represented in the Council. "For the past century, while you believed you were monitoring us, we were monitoring you," Elena continued. "We know the location of every military base, every weapon facility, every strategic resource depot. We know the weaknesses in your shield technology, the blind spots in your sensor networks, and the flaws in your tactical doctrines." The intelligence files continued to scroll past, showing battle plans, resource allocation charts, and detailed analyses of each species' military capabilities. It was a comprehensive breakdown of every Council member's defenses, accurate down to the smallest detail. "We know that the Vorthak Confederation stores 60% of their antimatter reserves in 3 facilities that we could destroy with single precision strikes," Elena said matter-of-factly. "We know that the hegemony's command and control network can be completely disabled by targeting 47 key communication relays. We know that the Trade Federation's entire economy could be crippled by interdicting 12 critical trade routes." Chancellor Grimek's voice crackled over the communication channel from Nexus Prime. "This is impossible. Our security is absolute. No one could have gathered this intelligence without our knowledge." Elena laughed, a sound that sent chills down the spines of every Council member listening. "Chancellor, you've been thinking like prey animals for so long that you forgot what real predators are capable of. Every human trader who visited your worlds was gathering intelligence. Every human diplomat who attended your meetings was studying your weaknesses. Every human researcher who collaborated with your scientists was learning how your technology works. Commander Torres added his own demonstration, accessing the computer systems of ships throughout the Council fleet and displaying their operational manuals on his screens. We didn't just map your territories and study your tactics. We learned how your technology functions at the most basic level. We can turn your own systems against you whenever we choose. The truth hit the Council like a tsunami. For 100 years, they had believed they were the dominant species in the galaxy, graciously allowing younger races like humanity to participate in their civilization. In reality, they had been studied, analyzed, and systematically penetrated by a species that treated intelligence gathering as a survival skill. Admiral Krax stared at his tactical display, watching his proud fleet held motionless by forces he couldn't understand, commanded by beings he had completely underestimated. "What do you want?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. Captain Morgan's image appeared on his screen one final time. "Admiral, that's not our decision to make, but I suggest you contact your government and recommend that they reconsider their position regarding humanity, because what you've seen today is just a small sample of what we're capable of when someone threatens our freedom." She paused, letting her words sink in. "We never wanted to be your enemies, Admiral, but we learned a long time ago that sometimes the only way to maintain peace is to be too dangerous to attack. Today, you discovered why humanity survived long enough to reach the stars." The communication ended, leaving Admiral Krax alone with his thoughts and his crippled fleet. Around him, space was filled with the most advanced warships the galaxy had ever produced, all of them rendered helpless by a species that the Council had dismissed as primitive barbarians. For the first time in his military career, Admiral Krax understood what it felt like to be prey, and he realized that the real nightmare wasn't what humanity had already shown them. It was wondering what other capabilities they had been keeping secret. The emergency session of the Galactic Council convened 12 hours after Admiral Krax's fleet had limped back to Nexus Prime, their ships barely functional after humanity's demonstration of technological superiority. The great chamber that had once buzzed with the confident chatter of galactic civilization now hummed with fear and uncertainty. Chancellor Grimek stood at the central podium, but his usual arrogant bearing had been replaced by something that looked uncomfortably like panic. Around the circular tiers, delegates from across the galaxy sat in stunned silence, many of them still processing intelligence reports that showed just how thoroughly humanity had infiltrated their governments and military organizations. President Maria Santos appeared on the main communication screen, broadcasting from Earth. Her image was crystal clear, transmitted through communication technology that bypassed every security measure the Council had thought impregnable. She wore a simple business suit, her expression calm and professional, but her eyes held the cold calculation of an apex predator. "Honored delegates of the Galactic Council," President Santos began, her voice carrying easily through the chamber's translation systems. "I address you today not as a supplicant seeking your approval, but as the representative of a species that you have gravely underestimated." She paused, allowing her words to sink in before continuing. "For the past century, humanity has participated in your galactic community in good faith. We followed your laws, respected your treaties, and contributed our knowledge and resources to the common good. We did this because we hoped that reason and cooperation would be enough to maintain peace." The holographic display behind her activated, showing the current military situation across the galaxy. Human ships were positioned at key strategic points throughout Council space, their locations chosen with mathematical precision to demonstrate humanity's reach. "Yesterday, you delivered an ultimatum demanding our complete surrender. Today, I am delivering humanity's response," Santos continued. "We reject your demands completely. More than that, we are presenting you with a new reality that you must accept." Chancellor Grimek found his voice, though it shook with barely controlled rage. "President Santos, your species may have surprised us with hidden capabilities, but you are still vastly outnumbered. The combined military might of the Council represents thousands of worlds and trillions of beings." President Santos smiled, and every delegate in the chamber felt their blood turn cold. "Chancellor Grimek, You still don't understand what you're facing. Let me make this clear for you. The display behind her changed, showing real-time surveillance footage from major military installations throughout Council space. At this moment, human assets have infiltrated every major military base, government facility, and strategic installation in Council territory. We have been preparing for this possibility for 2 centuries. The surveillance footage was impossible to deny. Human operatives moved through supposedly secure facilities as if they owned them. Security systems that had been considered impregnable were being monitored and controlled by human technicians. Weapon systems that formed the backbone of Council, military power, were shown to be compromised at the most basic level. We could have destroyed your civilizations at any time over the past 50 years, Santos continued, matter-of-factly. We chose not to because we hoped it wouldn't be necessary. Your ultimatum has forced us to reveal our true capabilities. Admiral Krax, his uniform still scorched from the previous day's encounter, stood slowly. What you're describing is an act of war against the entire galaxy. No, Admiral, Santos corrected. What we're describing is the reason why there won't be a war. You see, humanity learned something very important during our evolution on Earth. The best way to avoid a fight is to be too dangerous to challenge. Dr. Webb appeared on a secondary screen broadcasting from his hidden research facility. Delegates, what you witnessed yesterday was a limited demonstration using defensive technologies. We have weapon systems that could sterilize entire worlds, without leaving a trace of how it was done. We have cyber warfare capabilities that could crash every computer network in the galaxy simultaneously. We have intelligence assets that know more about your governments than your own leaders do. He paused, allowing the implications to sink in. But we don't want to use these capabilities. We never wanted to rule or destroy. We just wanted to survive and prosper alongside the rest of galactic civilization. President Santos reclaimed the center of attention. However, your ultimatum has made it clear that peaceful coexistence is no longer possible under the current system. Therefore, humanity is proposing a new arrangement. The holographic display changed again, showing a new organizational chart for galactic governance. Human representatives appeared alongside Council delegates in positions of authority and oversight. The Galactic Council will be restructured as the Galactic Defense Alliance, Santos announced. Humanity will take joint leadership alongside existing Council members with specific authority over military affairs and threat assessment. The chamber erupted in angry voices as delegates shouted over each other. Some demanded to know by what right humanity claimed such authority. Others threatened to withdraw their species from galactic civilization entirely. But underneath the outrage, there was a current of fear that no amount of bluster could hide. Chancellor Grimek pounded his gavel repeatedly, trying to restore order. When the noise finally subsided, he glared at the screen showing President Santos. You cannot simply dictate terms to the entire galaxy. We are a democratic institution representing thousands of species. Chancellor, Santos replied patiently. Democracy only works when all parties have roughly equal power. What you called democracy was actually a system where the strong preyed upon the weak while calling it civilization. Humanity is simply evening the odds. Elena appeared on another screen, now revealed in her true role as humanity's intelligence chief. Delegates, we have comprehensive files on every government corruption scandal, every illegal weapons program, and every secret alliance that exists in Council space. We know which of your leaders have been embezzling funds, which military officers have been selling weapons to pirates, and which species have been secretly preparing for war against their neighbors. She activated a display showing financial records, communication intercepts, and surveillance footage that made several delegates visibly pale. We could release all of this information publicly, allowing your own people to judge your fitness for leadership. Or we can work together to build something better. The threat was clear, but it was delivered with the calm professionalism that had become humanity's signature. They weren't ranting conquerors demanding submission. They were offering partnership backed by the implicit understanding that refusal would have consequences. Ambassador Thiss of the Ethereal Collective flickered with agitation. President Santos, assuming we accept your proposal, What guarantees do we have that humanity won't simply become the new tyrants? Santos considered the question seriously before answering. Ambassador Thys, you have the guarantee that comes from understanding human nature. We evolved as pack hunters, not solitary predators. We're most effective when we work together with others, not when we dominate them. She gestured to someone off-screen, and the display changed to show collaborative, human projects throughout the galaxy. Look at every human colony, every research station, every trade outpost. In every case, we've worked to improve the lives of both humans and aliens. We don't want subjects or slaves. We want partners and allies. Dr. Webb added his voice to the discussion. Delegates, humanity has identified threats to galactic civilization that your current leadership structure cannot address. There are hostile forces in other galaxies that make our territorial disputes look like children's games. There are cosmic phenomena that could destroy entire star systems if not properly monitored and countered. The display showed long-range sensor readings of disturbing phenomena at the galaxy's edge, energy signatures that didn't match any known natural occurrence, movement patterns that suggested organized intelligence operating on a scale that dwarfed galactic civilization. The galaxy needs humanity's capabilities, Santos continued. Our willingness to take risks, our talent for innovation, our experience with existential threats. But we also need your knowledge, your resources, and your perspectives. Together, we can build something stronger than either of us could achieve alone. The chamber fell silent as delegates considered their options. They could reject humanity's proposal and face the consequences of opposing a species that had demonstrated complete dominance over their military and intelligence capabilities. Or they could accept partnership with beings who had spent 2 centuries preparing for this moment. Chancellor Grimek looked around the chamber, seeing the resignation in his fellow delegates' faces. President Santos, if we accept this proposal, what happens to our existing governments and military structures? They remain in place, Chancellor, but with human oversight to ensure they serve the interests of galactic security, rather than narrow political agendas, Santos replied. Think of it as adult supervision for species that have forgotten what real threats look like. The vote, when it finally came, was unanimous. Not because the delegates trusted humanity, but because they finally understood the difference between civilization and survival. The Galactic Council that had ruled through bureaucracy and compromise was dead. In its place rose the Galactic Defense Alliance, led by a species that had learned the hardest lesson of all, that the price of peace is the strength to enforce it. As the session ended and delegates began the long process of restructuring Galactic governance, President Santos remained on the communication screen. Delegates, humanity welcomes you as partners in this new alliance. Together we will face the challenges that lie ahead, with the strength that comes from unity and the wisdom that comes from understanding our true place in a dangerous universe. The age of human restraint was over. The age of human leadership had begun.
The endless field of broken ships stretched out before Commander Jack Thompson. He stood at the viewport of his small scout vessel, his eyes taking in the massive junkyard of space debris that orbited the forgotten mining colony of Outpost 37. Twisted metal hulls, shattered solar arrays, and the hollow shells of what had once been proud ships now drifted silently in the void. Earth had abandoned this place 5 years ago, when the mines ran dry. They left behind everything too expensive to move: equipment, buildings, and damaged ships. Now, with enemies closing in on humanity's last safe places, these forgotten scraps might be their only hope. "What do you think, Commander?" asked Lieutenant Tom Miller, coming to stand beside Jack. "Doesn't look like much, does it?" Jack didn't answer right away. His mind was already sorting through the junkyard, seeing not what was, but what could be. "Run the numbers for me again," Jack finally said. Tom sighed and checked his tablet. "Not good, sir. The Stellar Coalition has us outgunned 10-1. Their ships are faster, stronger, and have better weapons. They've destroyed our main shipyards. The Earth Defense Fleet is down to 37 combat-ready vessels." He paused. "We're losing, sir. Everyone knows it." Jack turned away from the viewport, his face set with grim determination. Then we changed the game. The small command room on their scout ship became their planning center over the next 3 days. Jack called in the best minds they had left, engineers, weapons specialists, and tactical officers who hadn't given up hope. Most important was Chief Engineer Anna Reed, a gray-haired woman with eyes that missed nothing and hands that could fix anything. "This is insane," she said when Jack first explained his plan. "You want to build a warship from this junk. It would be a miracle if it even flew, let alone fought." "Then we'll make a miracle," Jack replied, "because we're out of conventional options." Anna studied the scans of the debris field again. Some of these mining lasers could be modified for military use, and there's enough hull material to build something substantial. But the power requirements alone. What about those 3 damaged reactor cores from the old defense platforms? Jack pointed to a cluster of debris on the far side of the field. 3 different types, 3 different generations of technology, Anna mused. Incompatible systems. Unless we make them compatible, Jack insisted. Make them work together in ways their designers never imagined. Slowly, Anna's expression changed as possibilities formed in her mind. It would be ugly, a patchwork monster. Jack smiled for the first time in weeks. But it would be our monster. The next morning, Jack addressed the 200 crew members assembled in the scout ship's cargo bay. "Most of you know our situation," he began. "The Coalition thinks they've beaten us. They have more ships, better technology, and they've pushed us back to our final defensive line around Earth." He paused, looking at the faces before him, some hopeful, some doubtful, all tired from months of retreating and losing. "The Coalition calls humans the rats behind our backs," Jack continued. "They think it's an insult. But rats are survivors. Rats adapt. Rats thrive in the worst conditions. And right now, being rats is our greatest strength." He activated the holographic projector, showing a rough design that Anna had created overnight. It was strange-looking, asymmetrical, with obvious pieces from different vessels cobbled together. "This is the Phoenix. We're going to build her right here, from this scrapyard. She won't be pretty, but she'll be deadly. She'll use the Coalition's strengths against them, their rigid thinking, their standardized battle tactics, their predictability. The Phoenix will be like nothing they've ever faced, because no one would be crazy enough to build a ship this way. No one except humans with their backs against the wall." A low murmur spread through the crowd. Jack could see the doubt in many eyes. This plan was asking them to bet humanity's future on a ship made from trash. "Sir," a young technician spoke up, "even if we could build this, where would we get the crew? We don't have enough trained personnel to spare." "We're the crew," Jack answered simply. "Every person in this room. From this moment, we're no longer just a scouting mission. We're shipbuilders. We're innovators. We're the first crew of the Phoenix." The real work began the next day. Small teams in spacesuits ventured out to assess and claim the most promising pieces of debris. Anna established a makeshift command center, coordinating the massive salvage operation. The scout ship's small fabrication unit ran day and night, creating custom parts to connect incompatible systems. Progress was slow at first. Accidents happened. A severed airline here, a radiation leak there. 2 crew members were injured when a section of hull plating broke free during recovery. But with each setback came new solutions, improvised fixes that no engineering manual had ever documented. By the end of the first month, the basic frame of the Phoenix had taken shape. It hung in space like a skeletal promise, built around the intact bridge section of an old mining command vessel. Workers swarmed over it like ants, welding, cutting, and reshaping scrap into something new. Jack often found himself watching the construction from various viewports. During one such moment, Tom joined him. "The Coalition would laugh if they saw what we're building," Tom said. "Let them laugh," Jack replied. "The best weapon is the one your enemy doesn't understand until it's too late." As the second month began, word of their project spread through the remaining human forces. At first, Fleet Command was skeptical, even angry that Jack had diverted resources to such an unproven concept. But desperation has a way of making the impossible seem worth trying. "They're sending us more personnel," Jack told Anna as they reviewed the day's progress. 50 engineers and technicians will arrive next week, and they're officially designating us as Project Phoenix. Anna looked up from her tablet, her face showing the exhaustion they all felt. "So we're not crazy anymore." Jack laughed. "Oh, we're still crazy. They'd just decided crazy might be our last hope." As the work continued, something unexpected happened. The crew began to believe. What had started as a desperate gamble was becoming a symbol of human ingenuity and resilience. Each day the Phoenix grew more defined, more real, and with it grew their determination to prove that humanity would not go quietly into extinction. 6 months, Anna promised Jack one evening as they stood looking at the half-completed warship. "Give me 6 months, and I'll give you a ship that will make the Coalition regret ever calling us rats." Jack nodded, his eyes fixed on the Phoenix. From nothing but scrap and dreams, they were building humanity's last, best hope. And somehow, against all odds, he believed it would be enough. 6 months passed in a blur of endless work. The junkyard around Outpost 37 had transformed. Where once there was only floating debris, now there was purpose. Hundreds of people worked in teams, their spacesuits moving like busy insects across the growing shape of the Phoenix. Engineer Anna Reed stood in what would become the main engine room, her tablet showing the day's tasks. Her once neat gray hair now always looked messy, and dark circles had formed under her eyes from too little sleep. But there was fire in those eyes, a determination that inspired everyone around her. "The third reactor is online," reported Sam, a young engineer who had become Anna's right hand. "Power output is stable at 65%. Anna nodded, making notes on her tablet. "Good. That's better than we hoped for. How are the connection points holding?" "The welds are solid. No leaks, no power fluctuations." What they had accomplished was already beyond what most engineers would believe possible. They had taken 3 different reactor cores, each designed for a different purpose, each using different technology, and made them work together as one power system. The first reactor's output fed into the second, which enhanced the energy before passing it to the third. The result was power levels that exceeded original specifications by more than double. "Commander Thompson is asking for an update," Sam said, checking his communicator. "He's bringing some visitors to see our progress." Anna sighed. More visitors meant more time explaining and less time working. But Jack had been good at getting them resources, so she couldn't complain too much. 30 minutes later, Jack arrived with 3 officers from Fleet Command. Anna recognized Admiral Wilson, a stern-faced woman who had initially opposed Project Phoenix. "And this is our engine room," Jack said proudly as they floated through the entry hatch. "Chief Engineer Reed has created something truly remarkable here." Anna nodded to the visitors. "We've managed to create a tri-core reactor system. Each core works in sequence, multiplying the output. We're seeing power levels 215% above standard specifications." Admiral Wilson's eyebrows rose slightly. "Impressive. But is it stable?" "More stable than it should be," Anna admitted. "We discovered that the radiation signature from the second core actually helps regulate the third. It's not something the original designers could have known. These systems were never meant to work together." "Show them the weapon systems next," Jack suggested. "That's where things get really interesting." The weapons bay of the Phoenix was a long chamber that had once been the cargo hold of a mining freighter. Now it housed what Anna considered her finest work. "These started as standard mining lasers," she explained to the visitors, "designed to cut through asteroid rock. We've modified them to channel through focusing crystals salvaged from old communications arrays." She activated a display showing test results. "The beam coherence is remarkable. In our simulations, it cuts through standard Coalition shields like they aren't even there." "How is that possible?" one of the officers asked. "Their shield technology is generations ahead of ours because we're not using military-grade weapons," Anna explained. Their shields are designed to stop military energy signatures. Our hybrid mining lasers produce a completely different wavelength. They simply don't recognize the threat until it's too late. Admiral Wilson slowly walked around the weapons bay, studying everything with careful eyes. "And the hull?" she finally asked. Jack smiled. "That's the best part. Show them, Anna." Anna led the group to a viewport where they could see workers attaching exterior hull plates. "We're using a patchwork of different alloys. The pattern looks random, but it's carefully calculated. When enemy targeting systems scan us, the different materials create false readings and echoes. Their targeting computers can't get a solid lock." As the tour continued, Anna could see the Admiral's expression changing from skepticism to cautious hope. The Phoenix was ugly. There was no denying that. Its hull was a jagged collection of mismatched parts. Its shape was asymmetrical, with bulges and protrusions where different systems had been integrated. But in that ugliness was a kind of brutal beauty. The beauty of survival, of making do with what you have. Later, when the visitors had left, Jack found Anna in her makeshift office. "The Admiral has approved full support for the Phoenix," he told her. "We're getting everything we asked for. Additional personnel, priority on salvage rights, even some manufactured components from Earth's remaining factories." Anna looked up from her work, allowing herself a small smile. "So they finally believe in us." "They're starting to," Jack replied, sitting down across from her. "But what matters more is that the crew believes. Have you noticed how they talk about the ship now? Not as a desperate last chance, but as something special." Anna had noticed. The Phoenix had become more than a project. It had become a symbol. In the mess hall, off-duty crew members swapped stories about the ship's unusual features. Some had started painting a Phoenix emblem on their spacesuits. There was even a growing collection of lucky charms being attached to the bridge stations. "We're 2 weeks from our first system test," Anna said. "The primary engines, life support, and defensive systems should all be operational by then. Weapons will take another week after that." Jack nodded, his face showing both excitement and concern. "And then we see if this impossible ship can actually fly." The day of the first power-up sequence arrived with a mixture of tension and hope. The crew, now numbering over 300, were at their stations throughout the Phoenix. Jack sat in the command chair on the bridge, which had been assembled from parts of 3 different vessels. Around him, officers monitored stations cobbled together from salvaged equipment. "All departments report ready, Commander," said Lieutenant Tom Miller from his position at Tactical. Jack took a deep breath. "Begin power-up sequence." Throughout the ship, the 3 reactors came online in careful sequence. Power flowed through hastily assembled conduits, lighting up systems that had been dark for years before being salvaged and rebuilt. Anna's voice came over the comm from engineering. "Reactor synchronization is holding steady. Power levels at 40% and rising." On the bridge, screens and control panels flickered to life. The hum of the ship's systems grew stronger, a vibration that could be felt through the deck plates. 50%, 60%, Anna reported. "All systems nominal." Jack leaned forward in his chair. "Take us to full power." There was a tense moment as the power levels rose. This was the moment of truth. Would the Phoenix hold together, or would their desperate gamble fail? 75%, 85%, 90%. The lights on the bridge brightened. The hum of the engines deepened into a powerful thrum that resonated through the entire ship. 100% power, Anna announced, her voice breaking with emotion. "All systems functioning within parameters. She's holding, Commander. The Phoenix is alive." A cheer erupted throughout the ship, echoing through corridors and chambers that had been empty space just months before. On the bridge, Jack allowed himself a rare smile. "Begin engine tests," he ordered once the celebration had quieted. "Let's see if our impossible ship can move." Outside, the maneuvering thrusters fired in careful sequence. Slowly, for the first time, The Phoenix began to move under its own power. From dead scraps and abandoned dreams, they had built something new, something that might just change the course of the war. 2 weeks after the successful power-up test, the Phoenix was ready. The weapons systems were online, the engines were fully operational, and the crew had run countless drills. They were as prepared as they could be. Now they needed to prove their unusual ship could actually fight. Commander Jack Thompson stood on the bridge, looking at the main view screen. The stars shone bright against the blackness of space. Outpost 37 was now far behind them as they patrolled the outer edge of the abandoned mining sector. "Status report," Jack ordered, his voice calm despite the tension everyone felt. Lieutenant Tom Miller checked his displays. All systems functioning at optimal levels. Shields at full strength. Weapons hot but inactive. Communications Officer Lisa Brown turned from her station. "No signals detected in the area, Commander. As far as we can tell, we're alone out here." Jack nodded, but didn't fully believe it. Coalition scout ships had been spotted in nearby sectors. It was only a matter of time before one ventured into their territory. "Maintain yellow alert status," he said, "and continue running silent." Running silent was something the Phoenix did remarkably well. With their power systems dampened and their unique hull configuration confusing sensor suites, they were nearly invisible to standard detection methods. They could hide in plain sight, waiting for their moment. That moment came 3 days later. "Contact," Tom called out, his voice sharp with sudden alertness. Coalition vessel dropping out of faster-than-light travel at coordinates 227 by 184. Jack straightened in his command chair. On screen, the view screen shifted to show a sleek, silver ship appearing in a flash of blue light. Its hull was smooth and elegant, with none of the rough patchwork that characterized the Phoenix. This was a Coalition scout ship, smaller than their main battle cruisers, but still a formidable opponent. "They're running standard sweep patterns," Tom reported. "No indication they've spotted us." Jack's mind raced through their options. This was the test they had been waiting for, but he had to be careful. If the Phoenix failed, or if the Coalition ship managed to send a warning, they would lose the element of surprise that might be humanity's only advantage. "Battle stations," he ordered quietly. "Prepare all weapons systems. Plot an intercept course that keeps us in their sensor shadow until the last possible moment." Throughout the ship, the crew moved with practiced efficiency. In engineering, Anna monitored the power systems, ready to channel extra energy to weapons or shields as needed. In the weapons bay, gunners prepared the modified mining lasers for their first real combat test. "Distance to target, 12,000 kilometers in closing," Tom announced. "We'll be within optimal firing range in 3 minutes." Jack watched the enemy ship on the screen. The Coalition crew had no idea what was about to hit them. They believed this sector was abandoned, with nothing but debris and empty mining stations. They were about to learn how wrong they were. 2 minutes to optimal range. The bridge was silent except for the soft beeping of instruments. Jack could feel his heart beating in his chest, but his hands were steady. This moment would determine if their gamble had paid off, if a ship built from scrap could stand against the advanced technology of the Coalition. 1 minute. Jack leaned forward. "Prepare to bring all systems to full power on my mark. Target their communications array first, then engines. I want that ship disabled, not destroyed." 30 seconds. Jack took a deep breath. Mark. The Phoenix surged to life. Power flooded through its systems as it accelerated toward the unsuspecting Coalition vessel. The element of surprise was complete. By the time the enemy sensors detected them, they were already closing fast. "They're powering up shields," Tom reported. "They're trying to send a signal." "Fire," Jack ordered. The modified mining lasers fired, their beams a strange purple-white color as they cut through space. They struck the Coalition ship's communications array first, just as planned. The effect was immediate and dramatic. Instead of being deflected by the enemy shields, The unconventional energy signature passed through them like they weren't even there. The communications array exploded in a shower of metal and energy. On the view screen, Jack could see the coalition ship turning, trying to bring its weapons to bear on this unexpected threat. "They're returning fire," Tom warned. Energy beams lanced out from the coalition vessel, striking the Phoenix's makeshift hull. The ship shuddered, but held together. "Shields holding at 82%, Tom reported. "Their targeting systems are having trouble getting a lock on us." Just as Anna had predicted, the patchwork hull was confusing the enemy sensors. Their shots were increasingly off-target as their computers struggled to compensate. "Target their engines," Jack ordered. "Fire when ready." The Phoenix's lasers fired again, cutting into the coalition ship's engine section. There was another explosion, and the enemy vessel began to drift, its main propulsion system crippled. "They're disabled, Commander," Tom reported, unable to keep the excitement from his voice. "They managed to get off a partial distress signal, but our jamming systems corrupted most of it." Jack allowed himself a small smile. "Bring us alongside. Prepare boarding teams. I want their data cores, navigation charts, everything." 20 minutes later, the boarding teams returned with a wealth of valuable intelligence. The coalition crew had been secured in their own brig, too shocked by the sudden attack to offer much resistance. "You need to see this, sir," Lisa said, handing Jack a data tablet. "We pulled their patrol routes and communication protocols. But more importantly, we now know their battle plans." Jack studied the information, his expression growing serious. The data showed a massive coalition fleet gathering just beyond the outer colonies. They were preparing for a major offensive, a final push toward Earth itself. "How long?" he asked. 3 weeks, maybe 4, Lisa replied. "They're calling it the final pacification. They believe this will end the war." Jack looked up at the crew on his bridge, their faces showing a mixture of fear and determination. The Phoenix had proven itself in its first combat test, but one small victory wouldn't be enough to save humanity. "Send a priority communication to Fleet Command," he ordered. "Tell them what we've learned. And tell them." He paused, looking at the disabled coalition ship on the view screen. "Tell them the Phoenix is coming to join the fight." As the message was sent, Jack stood at the viewport, looking out at the stars. The Phoenix had drawn first blood. Their impossible ship, built from nothing but scrap and determination, had defeated a technologically superior enemy vessel. It wasn't just a victory. It was proof that humanity still had a chance. "What are your orders, sir?" Tom asked. Jack turned back to the bridge, his face set with resolve. "Set course for the Sol system. Maximum speed. It's time to show the coalition what rats can really do when cornered." The Phoenix's engines flared to life, pushing the patchwork vessel forward into the darkness of space and toward the greatest battle humanity had ever faced. The journey to the Sol system took 8 days. 8 days of final preparations, weapon calibrations, and battle drills. 8 days for the crew to prepare themselves for what might be humanity's last stand. The Phoenix had proven itself against a single scout ship, but soon it would face an entire coalition battle fleet. Jack spent most of those days on the bridge or in the tactical room, studying the intelligence they had gathered. The coalition was bringing 30 warships, a mix of heavy cruisers, destroyers, and support vessels. Against them, Earth could field only 17 ships, most of them damaged from previous battles and hastily repaired. "The odds aren't good," Admiral Wilson said during their final strategy meeting. Her face on the view screen looked tired but determined. "Even with the Phoenix, we're outnumbered almost 2 to 1. "Numbers aren't everything," Jack replied. "The Phoenix can hit them in ways they won't expect. And if we can force them to change their battle plans, to react to us instead of following their standard tactics, we can create openings for the rest of the fleet." The Admiral nodded. "We're counting on that. The Phoenix will take point position when the coalition arrives. Your job is to disrupt their formation and create confusion. The rest of the fleet will follow your lead." When the meeting ended, Jack found Tom and Anna waiting for him in the corridor. "How's the crew?" he asked. "Nervous," Tom admitted, "but ready. They believe in this ship. They believe in you." Anna nodded. "We've made some final adjustments to the weapon systems. The mining lasers are now 15% more powerful, and we've improved the targeting algorithms to compensate for coalition evasive maneuvers." Jack smiled at his two most trusted officers. "Get some rest. Tomorrow we make history, one way or another." The coalition fleet arrived exactly when the intelligence had predicted. They emerged from faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Kuiper Belt, their ships forming a perfect attack wedge. It was a formation designed to concentrate firepower while minimizing exposure, a standard coalition tactic that had overwhelmed human defenses many times before. On the Phoenix's bridge, Jack watched them appear on the long-range scanners. "They're right on schedule," he said. "Status report." "All systems at full power," Tom replied from the tactical station. "The rest of our fleet is in position, awaiting our signal." Lisa turned from her communications console. "We're intercepting their transmissions. They're calling us the Junkyard Fleet." Instead of being insulted, Jack smiled. "Perfect. Arrogance will make them vulnerable." The human fleet was positioned behind the shelter of several large asteroids. The Phoenix was at the front, its strange silhouette barely visible against the darkness of space. Behind it waited the 17 remaining ships of Earth's Defense Force, a mix of cruisers, frigates, and converted civilian vessels pressed into military service. "We are detecting target acquisition scans," Tom reported as the coalition fleet moved closer. "They'll be in firing range in 2 minutes." Jack took a deep breath. Everything they had worked for came down to this moment. Send the signal to the fleet. Execute Maneuver Alpha. The Phoenix surged forward, its unconventional engines pushing it to an acceleration rate that far exceeded normal specifications. It shot toward the coalition formation like a bullet, moving so fast that the enemy targeting computers couldn't adjust quickly enough. "They're trying to lock weapons," Tom called out as warning signals flashed across his console. "Initiate hull plate shift," Jack ordered calmly. Outside, the Phoenix's outer hull plates moved slightly, changing their alignment in a pattern that Anna had calculated to maximum precision. When the coalition ships fired their energy weapons, the beams struck the angled plates and deflected away in unpredictable directions. Some even reflected back toward the coalition ships themselves. "Their targeting algorithms are failing," Lisa reported, monitoring the confused communications from the enemy fleet. "They can't get a solid lock." "Now it's our turn," Jack said. "Fire all weapons. Target their lead vessel." The Phoenix's modified mining lasers fired, cutting through space with their strange purple-white energy. They struck the lead coalition cruiser, bypassing its shields and slicing deep into its hull. At the same time, the industrial electromagnets that Anna had reproposed as weapons activated, creating a powerful magnetic field that disrupted the coalition formation, pulling smaller ships off course. "Direct hit," Tom shouted. "Their lead cruiser is reporting major damage to weapons and propulsion systems." Behind the Phoenix, the rest of the human fleet emerged from hiding, following the path that the Phoenix had carved through the enemy formation. They focused their fire on the ships that the Phoenix had disrupted, exploiting the gaps in the coalition's once perfect battle line. "Coalition ships are breaking formation," Lisa announced, her voice rising with excitement. "Their captains are requesting new orders. Their central command is trying to reorganize." This was the advantage Jack had counted on. The coalition military operated on strict hierarchies and precise battle plans. When faced with something they hadn't trained for, something as unpredictable as the Phoenix, their rigid command structure became a weakness. "Press the attack," Jack ordered. "Don't give them time to adapt." The battle raged for hours. The Phoenix darted through the coalition fleet like a predator, striking hard and fast before moving to a new position. Its unconventional weapons and strange defensive capabilities confused and frustrated the enemy commanders. Each time they adjusted their tactics to counter one aspect of the Phoenix, the human ship would switch to a different approach. Slowly, the tide began to turn. 3 coalition ships had been destroyed outright. Several more were heavily damaged and trying to withdraw. The human fleet had suffered losses too. 5 ships destroyed, 3 more badly damaged. But they were still fighting, inspired by the Phoenix's unexpected success. Coalition command ship is signaling a withdrawal, Lisa reported, her voice hoarse from hours of continuous updates. They're retreating, Commander. A cheer erupted on the bridge. For the first time in the war, a coalition battle group had been forced to withdraw. The Phoenix, scared and with several systems running on emergency power, had changed the course of the battle. Damage report, Jack called out once the celebration had quieted. Hull breaches on decks 4 through 7, Tom replied. Reactor 2 is offline. Weapons are at 60% capacity, but we're still combat capable. Jack nodded, feeling a mixture of pride, exhaustion, and determination. Maintain battle stations. They might come back. But the coalition didn't return. Their remaining ships gathered their damaged vessels and disappeared into faster-than-light travel, leaving the human fleet victorious in the emptiness of space. Admiral Wilson's face appeared on the main view screen. She looked shocked, as if she couldn't quite believe what had happened. In 30 years of service, she said, I've never seen anything like what your ship just did, Commander. The Phoenix has given us something we haven't had in a long time. Hope. Jack looked around at his exhausted but proud crew. What happens now, Admiral? Now. Wilson's face broke into a rare smile. Now we take this victory and build on it. Your ship has shown us a new way to fight. Fleet Command's message just came through. Build more. As the human fleet regrouped and began the journey back to Earth, word of the Phoenix's victory spread quickly. The ship, built from nothing but scrap and determination, had stood against the best the coalition could offer, and had won. It wasn't just a ship anymore. It was a legend, a symbol of humanity's refusal to surrender. And this was just the beginning. 1 year had passed since the Battle of the Kuiper Belt. 1 year since the Phoenix had changed the course of the war. In that time, humanity had transformed its approach to fighting the Stellar Coalition. Jack stood on the observation deck of the Phoenix, looking out at what had once been Outpost 37. The abandoned mining colony was now a bustling shipyard. Where there had once been only floating debris, there were now dozens of vessels under construction. Each one followed the Phoenix philosophy, adaptive, unpredictable, and built from whatever materials were at hand. It's quite a sight, isn't it? Anna said, joining him at the viewport. Her gray hair was now completely white, but her eyes were as sharp as ever. I never thought I'd see this place so alive again, Jack admitted. What had started with one desperate gamble had become humanity's new strategy. Mining colonies, space stations, and even refugee outposts had been converted into improvised shipyards. Each produced vessels that embraced the lessons learned from the Phoenix, ships that defied conventional design, used repurposed technology in unexpected ways, and confused enemy targeting systems. The newest ships are even better than we were, Anna said with pride. The Griffin can reconfigure its weapon systems in the middle of battle. The Chimera can split into 3 separate attack craft and then rejoin. The Hydra can absorb damage in one section and use the energy to power its weapons. Tom approached them, carrying a data tablet. Fleet report just came in. The Coalition lost another battle group at Proxima Centauri. That's their 5th major defeat in the past 3 months. Jack nodded. The tide of the war had shifted dramatically. The Coalition, which had once pushed humanity to the brink of extinction, was now on the defensive. Their rigid military hierarchy struggled to adapt to the chaotic human approach to space combat. Every time they adjusted their tactics to counter one human innovation, 3 more would appear. And the Phoenix? Jack asked. Are the upgrades complete? Final testing is underway now, Anna replied. She's barely recognizable from her original form. That was true. The Phoenix had been continuously modified throughout the past year. After each battle, Anna and her team would integrate captured coalition technology, repair damage with improved materials, and add new systems. The ship was now a hybrid of human ingenuity and alien technology, still ugly by conventional standards, but undeniably effective. "Commander," Lisa's voice came over the comm system. "Priority message from Fleet Command. The Coalition is requesting communication on a diplomatic channel." Jack, Anna, and Tom exchanged surprised looks. This was unexpected. The Coalition had never shown interest in communication before, only conquest. "Patch it through to the tactical room," Jack ordered. "We'll take it there." In the tactical room, a large view screen dominated one wall. When it activated, it showed the face of a Coalition ambassador. The alien's gray skin and mandibles were familiar to all humans now, after years of war. "Commander Thompson," the ambassador said, its translator converting the clicks and whistles of its native language into English. "I am Ambassador Krell of the Stellar Coalition High Command." Jack kept his face neutral. "This is unexpected, Ambassador. The Coalition hasn't been interested in talking before." The ambassador's mandibles twitched in what humans had learned was an expression of respect or submission. "Circumstances have changed. We request a ceasefire and formal negotiations." The room fell silent. After years of desperate fighting, the concept of peace seemed almost unimaginable. "Why now?" Jack asked finally. "We underestimated your species' capacity for adaptation," the ambassador stated formally. "What you built from nothing now rules our battlefield calculations. Our military analysts can no longer predict human tactics or technology. Our commanders cannot adapt quickly enough to your innovations." Jack glanced at Anna and Tom, seeing his own surprise mirrored in their faces. The Coalition, with its superior technology and resources, was admitting that humanity's junkyard fleet had beaten them. "Our High Command has reassessed the cost of continuing this conflict," the ambassador continued. "We seek terms that will allow both our civilizations to survive." After the communication ended, Jack remained in the tactical room with his senior officers, discussing what had just happened. "Can we trust them?" Tom asked, voicing what everyone was thinking. "Not completely," Jack admitted, "but their losses have been significant. The war isn't going the way they planned." Admiral Wilson joined the discussion via secure channel from Earth. "This could be our chance to secure lasting peace, but we negotiate from strength, not desperation. The Phoenix fleet will remain on high alert during any talks." Over the next month, representatives from Earth and the Coalition met on a neutral space station. Jack attended as part of the human delegation, bringing with him detailed scans of Coalition technology that the Phoenix had captured during its many battles. The negotiations were tense but productive. The Coalition, once determined to conquer humanity, now sought boundaries and rules of engagement. They offered technological exchange and trade routes in return for peace. Most importantly, they recognized human space as sovereign territory, something they had never done for any other species they encountered. When the preliminary peace treaty was signed, Jack returned to the Phoenix with mixed emotions. The ship had been his home for over a year, the center of humanity's resistance and eventual triumph. "What happens now?" Tom asked as they walked through the corridors of the ship. "The Phoenix will lead a patrol fleet along the new borders," Jack replied. "The Coalition may have agreed to peace, but trust needs to be earned." In the engine room, Anna was supervising final adjustments to the latest upgrades. "I never thought I'd say this," she said when Jack told her about his new assignment. "But I'm going to miss this ugly ship." Jack smiled. "You're not getting rid of us that easily. You're coming too, as chief engineer for the entire patrol fleet." Later, alone on the observation deck, Jack looked out at the stars. The Phoenix had changed everything. A ship built from desperation and scrap metal had altered the course of history, transforming humanity from prey to equals. A junior officer approached hesitantly. "Sir, Fleet Command has asked for your input on the new ship designs. They want to know if we should start making them more conventional now that the war is ending. Jack thought about this for a moment, then shook his head. No, we keep them adaptable, unpredictable. That's not just how we fought. It's who we are. Humans adapt, we improvise, we overcome. That's the lesson of the Phoenix. As if in response, the ship hummed around him, its mismatched systems working in perfect harmony. The warship built from nothing had indeed come to rule the battlefield, and in doing so, had secured a future for humanity among the stars. From scrap and dreams, they had forged not just victory, but a new beginning.